Hi guys, and welcome to Relaxation History Story. Tonight we're not easing into sleep with silk sheets or central heating humming quietly in the background. Tonight you're standing on a rough Atlantic shoreline, boots sinking into cold sand, breath already fogging the air as if winter itself is watching you arrive. You can smell salt, wet wood, and nervous sweat. Behind you, the ship creaks like it is relieved to be done with you. Ahead of you, dark trees pressed together, unfamiliar and silent. You probably will not survive this, statistically speaking. And that is not me being dramatic. That is just early colonial math. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Now, dim the lights and let your shoulders soften as you step fully into this colder world. You arrive before the first real snow, but not by much. It is late autumn in colonial America, and the air already feels sharp in your lungs. You came thinking you had time to build, time to prepare, time to learn. That optimism is one of the first things winter will take from you. Settlers often landed in late fall because Atlantic crossings depended on seasonal winds, a well-established historical fact that rarely gets romanticized. The reality is that this timing was terrible for survival. You're already behind. You look at your supplies and feel that quiet flicker of doubt. Barrels of grain, some salted meat, tools that looked impressive on the dock back home. None of it screams warmth. You have slept through cold nights before, sure, but this feels different. The ground itself radiates chill. At night, you realize quickly the cold does not just surround you. It seeps upward, climbing through your bones like it has a purpose. You do what humans always do when facing the unknown. You rush. Trees come down with dull, exhausting thuds. Shelters go up crooked and thin. They are not homes yet. They are statements of hope made from green wood and optimism. Historians still debate whether early settlers truly understood how severe North American winters could be, or whether they simply believed hardship was part of a divine test they were meant to endure. Either way, no one here is sleeping well. Night falls earlier than you expect. Without electric light, darkness is not gradual. It arrives. One moment the sky is grey, the next it is heavy and black, and you suddenly understand how important walls are. You crawl into your temporary shelter, a crude structure that smells of sap and damp earth. The wind pushes through gaps you didn't notice during the day. You lie down fully clothed because undressing feels like surrender. Your sleep is shallow. You wake often. Every sound feels closer in the dark. A branch cracks and your mind fills in teeth and claws. A fringe historical tidbit that rarely makes textbooks is that many settlers reported their first American nights as being louder than anything they had known. Forests here were dense, alive, and vocal. The cold sharpened every noise, making sleep feel like a negotiation rather than a rest. You try to remember how people slept back home. Stone houses, thick walls, familiar routines. Even peasants in Europe often had centuries-old buildings that retained heat better than these wooden boxes you're building from scratch. This is not just a new land, it is a reset. Every night is an experiment, and failure means frostbitten fingers or worse. As you lie there, you start to understand that sleep is no longer passive. It is active survival. Your body curls inward, instinctively conserving heat. You tuck your hands between your thighs. A small trick that works better than pride would like to admit. Breathing becomes deliberate, slow. You learn not to waste warmth. There is a strange mental shift happening too. Time stretches without clocks dictating sleep. Your sense of night is elastic. You doze, wake, listen, and doze again. This pattern, later called segmented sleep by scholars, was common long before industrial schedules, but here it is intensified by fear and cold. You're not just resting. You're standing guard over your own pulse. Some settlers whisper prayers before sleep, not always out of devotion, but out of habit and comfort. Religion is a blanket of sorts, thin maybe, but better than nothing. Others mutter curses under their breath when the wind finds a new crack in the wall. Both responses are understandable. The cold does not care which one you choose. You notice something else during these first nights. Hunger feels sharper after sunset. Food becomes heat in your mind. This understanding will deepen later, but already you sense that eating enough before sleep matters. Your stomach growls, and you wonder if tomorrow you will eat less to save for winter or more to survive the night. These are not choices you expected to make so soon. Lying there, you think about sleep differently. Back home, sleep was recovery. Here it is risk management. You do not fully relax because you cannot afford to. Your ears stay half awake. Your muscles never quite unclench. Modern people talk about sleep hygiene. You would laugh at the phrase if you had the energy. Outside, the temperature drops further. Frost forms quietly, a thin white skin on the ground that crunches softly when someone shifts nearby. This is your warning. Winter is not approaching. It is already here, testing you gently before it commits. And as you finally drift into a lighter, uneasy sleep, wrapped in damp wool and hope, you realize something important. Surviving the day will matter, yes, but surviving the night will define everything that comes next. Morning comes quietly, not with sunlight flooding your shelter, but with a thin gray glow leaking through gaps in the walls. You wake stiff, joints protesting as you uncurl yourself from the position you barely remember choosing. Sleep happened, technically, but it did not refresh you. It merely paused the night. The cold never really left. It just waited. You step outside and breathe in air that smells of wet leaves and smoke from a fire that never fully went out. The ground crunches underfoot, frost snapping like tiny bones. Today the urgency feels sharper. The shelters you threw together are not enough. They kept the rain off maybe, but winter will not respect maybe. You can feel that certainty settling in your chest. Early colonial shelters were often simple wattle and daub structures, or rough log frames. A mainstream historical fact supported by archaeological remains across New England. They were fast to build, which mattered more than durability at first. You now understand the trade-off. Speed saved lives in October. Weak walls threaten them by December. You spend the day reinforcing what you can. Mud gets packed into gaps between logs. Moss is shoved into cracks, its damp green smell clinging to your fingers. It is not elegant, but it blocks wind better than nothing. The idea of insulation is intuitive, even if the science behind it is not yet formalized. Stop the air, slow the cold. That is the logic you work with. Inside the shelter, light is dim even at midday. The walls lean slightly inward as if tired already. The roof creaks when wind moves through nearby trees. You make peace with imperfection because you have no choice. This place is not meant to last decades. It is meant to last the winter. Maybe sleep comes up again in conversation, though no one uses the word casually. Where you sleep matters now. Near the fire pit means warmth, but also smoke and sparks. Farther away means cleaner air, but colder bones. Someone jokes that at least if the roof collapses, you will not be asleep to notice. The laugh is thin. Everyone knows fire is both friend and threat. Entire settlements will burn this way in later years. A lesser-known tidbit is that some early settlers deliberately built their sleeping platforms raised off the ground, not just for comfort, but to escape cold air pooling near the floor. You help stack rough boards on short logs, creating a crude bed. It wobbles, but when you sit on it, you notice the difference immediately. The ground no longer steals heat directly from your body. It feels like progress. Night falls again, faster than you want it to. You crawl inside and notice the shelter smells different now, earthier, more human. Smoke lingers in your hair and clothes. You lie down on your raised platform, wrapped in blankets that feel thinner than they did yesterday. Wool scratches your skin, but you welcome it. Smooth fabrics would not trap warmth the same way. As darkness settles, the wind tests your work. It presses against the wall, searching for weakness. Some cold gets through, but less than before. You feel a small, quiet pride. Historians still argue whether early settlers adapted quickly because of ingenuity or because failure was simply not an option. Lying here shivering less than last night, you suspect it was both. Sleep is still fragmented. You wake when embers shift in the fire pit. You wake when someone coughs. You wake when the wind rises and falls like breath. But there is a subtle change. You're not as afraid. Familiarity has begun its slow work. The shelter may be fragile, but it is becoming known. You listen to the sounds inside now as much as outside. Wood pops as it cools. Someone mutters in their sleep. A mouse scurries, bold enough to explore human spaces. Animals will become uninvited companions as winter deepens. For now, it is just a reminder that warmth attracts life. You think about houses back home again, but the comparison stings less. This place is becoming yours, however temporary. There is comfort in that. Sleep responds to a sense of belonging. Even when conditions are harsh, you drift off for longer stretches, dreaming shallow dreams that dissolve quickly when you wake. The cold still seeps in through the walls, but slower now. You adjust your position instinctively, turning away from drafts, tucking your feet deeper into blankets. These small movements become part of your nighttime routine. No one teaches you this. Your body learns. By morning, you are tired but functional. That feels like a victory. The shelter did not collapse, you did not freeze. The night did not take anyone. This is how success is measured now, in quiet check marks that no one celebrates too loudly. As you step outside again, you understand something important. These shelters are not just places to sleep, they are lessons. Every night reveals a flaw, and every day gives you a chance to fix it. Winter is the instructor, strict and unforgiving, but also consistent. You look at the rough walls, the patched gaps, the smoke-darkened roof, and you realize that sleep here will never be luxurious, but it might become reliable. And in a winter like this, reliability is everything. By the third stretch of nights, you begin to sense that this land has its own rules, and none of them were written with you in mind. The cold is not just colder than what you remember from home. It behaves differently. It lingers. It presses down rather than passing through. During the day, the sun rises low and weak, offering light without much warmth, like a polite guest who refuses to help with chores. You notice it first in your sleep. In Europe, cold nights often softened by morning. Here, the chill you fall asleep with is still waiting when you wake. The shelter holds some warmth, but the air itself feels heavier, less willing to let go of cold. This is not imagination. A mainstream historical fact is that the northeastern American climate is more continental than much of Western Europe, meaning greater temperature extremes. Winters swing harder and last longer. You're learning this lesson one night at a time. During the day, conversations turn practical and uneasy. People compare notes without quite realizing it. Who slept the least? Whose toes went numb? Who woke with ice on the inside of the wall near their head? Yes, ice. Condensation freezes overnight, leaving thin, glittering patterns that vanish by mid-morning. It looks almost beautiful until you realize it formed inches from your face. You start paying attention to wind direction. This is new. Back home, weather happened to you. Here you track it. You notice how northern winds slice through shelters more aggressively, how trees creak differently depending on the direction of the gusts. At night, when the winds shift, you feel it immediately. Your sleep adjusts around it, your body turning slightly like a compass needle, seeking the least painful alignment. There is a quiet recalibration happening in your mind. You stop thinking of winter as a season and start thinking of it as a force. It dictates when you sleep, how deeply and for how long. Long, uninterrupted rest becomes rare. Instead, you nap in pieces, stacking small rests together like firewood, hoping they add up to enough. A lesser-known historical tidbit is that some settlers believed the American cold was damp, in a way that penetrated the body more deeply. They did not have the language of humidity or heat transfer, but they trusted their bones. Modern scholars still debate whether this perception was psychological or rooted in real climatic differences, but the complaints were widespread enough to suggest something more than exaggeration. Night after night, you test small changes. You move your bed platform closer to the wall that stays driest. You hang spare cloth over a drafty corner, watching it flutter gently as air sneaks in. You place your shoes near the fire pit so they're not frozen solid by morning. Each adjustment is a response to the land itself, not to advice brought from overseas. Sleep becomes a kind of dialogue. The environment speaks through cold fingers, stiff neck, shallow breathing. You answer with layers, positioning, and patience. Sometimes the land wins. You wake shaking, teeth chattering, heart racing. Other nights you manage longer stretches of unconsciousness, drifting off to the sound of wind instead of fighting it. You begin to understand why early accounts describe America as both abundant and brutal. The same forests that promise endless firewood also block sunlight. The same rivers that provide food freeze into barriers of ice. Even the snow behaves differently. When it comes, it stays, piling up and reflecting moonlight so brightly that nights feel eerily illuminated. Moonlit snow changes sleep in subtle ways. The shelter is brighter at night now, shadows sharper. You wake thinking it is morning, only to realize it is still deep night. This disorientation adds to fatigue. Your internal clock struggles without consistent cues. Darkness and light no longer align neatly with sleep and waking. Someone mentions that indigenous communities nearby do not seem as troubled by the cold. This observation carries a mix of curiosity and quiet resentment. They sleep differently, you're told. Their structures, their clothing, their routines are shaped by generations of adaptation. You watch and learn where you can, even if pride prevents open acknowledgement. Historians still argue whether early settlers fully grasped the environmental knowledge being demonstrated around them, or whether cultural barriers limited what they were willing to adopt. Lying awake at night, you suspect that desperation will eventually override tradition. Cold is persuasive. You notice changes in your dreams too. They become simpler, less narrative, more sensation. Dreams of warmth, of enclosed spaces, of lying still without discomfort. Your mind seems to practice comfort when it cannot achieve it fully in waking life. Waking up feels like being pulled back into negotiation with the cold. By now, you accept that sleep will never be what it was. It is no longer a retreat from the world, but a way of enduring it. You do not complain as much. Complaints burn energy, and energy is warmth. This is not resignation, it is adaptation, quiet and practical. On one particularly cold night, the fire dies down more than expected. You wake abruptly, aware before thought that something is wrong. The air feels sharper, your nose cold to the touch. You scramble, half awake, to coax embers back to life. This moment lodges in your memory. Sleep here is conditional. It depends on vigilance. As you lie back down, warmth slowly returning, you realize that this land is teaching you how to sleep differently, not deeply, not comfortably, but attentively. You sleep with the environment, not against it. And as the nights stretch longer and colder, the understanding settles in. You did not come prepared for this climate, but you are learning it breath by breath, night by night, letting the land shape your sleep, as surely as it shapes everything else. By now, your body has started teaching you lessons your mind never studied. You wake not because of fear or noise, but because something inside you notices heat slipping away. It is subtle at first, a coolness along your spine, a numb tingle in your fingers. Your body responds before thought, pulling inward, curling tighter, conserving what little warmth you have managed to gather through the night. People of your time do not speak in terms of metabolism or thermoregulation, but the experience is universal. Period accounts make it clear that early settlers quickly understood that cold was not just something around them, it was something that entered them. Sleep becomes less about rest and more about maintaining equilibrium. Stay warm enough and you live. Fail, and the night takes something from you. You notice how quickly stillness turns dangerous. Lying motionless feels peaceful at first, but after a while, cold creeps in faster. You shift often not for comfort, but to remind your muscles to generate heat. It makes deep sleep difficult. Your nights are a cycle of drifting, tightening, adjusting, and drifting again. This is not insomnia. It is strategy. Fire helps, but only to a point. Heat from the hearth does not travel far, and it rises. Your face may feel warm while your feet remain painfully cold. You learn to sleep angled slightly toward the fire, one side of your body receiving more warmth. It is an awkward position, but effective. Comfort becomes secondary to survival. One odd detail recorded in some colonial diaries is that people believed certain sleeping postures preserved warmth better. Curling on the left side, keeping the heart protected, tucking the chin to reduce exposed skin. These ideas were not scientific in the modern sense, but they came from observation. Enough cold nights will turn anyone into a researcher. You also learn that what you wear to sleep matters more than you expected. Removing damp clothing is crucial, even when undressing feels risky. Wet fabric steals heat relentlessly. Dry wool, no matter how scratchy, becomes precious. Linen is layered underneath, then wool, then sometimes another wool garment turned inside out to trap air. This layering is not fashion. It is physics learned the hard way. Surviving letters from the period show repeated complaints about frozen extremities, fingers, toes, ears, noses. You experience this yourself, waking with hands stiff and unresponsive until you breathe warm air onto them or tuck them beneath your thighs. The pain, as sensation returns, is sharp and immediate. You grit your teeth and remind yourself that pain means circulation. It is strange comfort. There is still no full agreement on how much early settlers understood about heat loss through the head. Some wore nightcaps religiously, believing uncovered hair allowed warmth to escape. Others dismissed it as superstition. Lying awake with your scalp aching from cold air, you become a believer. Anything that helps, even slightly, is worth keeping. Food enters the conversation again, this time with more clarity. You notice that nights following heavier meals feel different. Your body radiates warmth longer. Sleep comes easier. This is not coincidence. Colonists did not know calories as a concept, but they knew fuel. Meat stews, dense bread, and fats become evening priorities. Going to bed hungry feels like gambling. A lesser-known curiosity from the time is that some settlers drank warm liquids before sleep. Not for pleasure, but as a deliberate warming tactic. Heated cider, thin broth, even warm water when nothing else was available. The effect is temporary but noticeable. You feel it in your chest as you lie down, a gentle spreading warmth that buys you time. Your breath becomes something you notice now. Inhale through the nose and the cold bites. Exhale, and you feel warmth brush your lips. Some people pull blankets up close, creating a small pocket of warmer air to breathe. Others find the moisture uncomfortable. Preferences form quickly, shaped by experience rather than advice. The shelter itself responds to temperature changes. Wood contracts at night, opening hairline gaps that were sealed during the day. You hear faint whistling as air finds new paths inside. Each sound wakes you slightly. You make a mental note to pack more moss into that corner tomorrow. Sleep feeds into planning. Planning feeds into survival. Experts continue to disagree on whether these fragmented sleep patterns caused long-term exhaustion or whether the human body adapted over time. From where you lie, shivering less than you did weeks ago, it feels like adaptation. You're still tired but not as panicked. Your body seems to know what to expect now. Dreams remain shallow but persistent. You dream of enclosed spaces, of burrows, of hands wrapped around cups that never cool. These images repeat. Your mind is rehearsing warmth the way it rehearses danger. Even sleep is working overtime. You wake once to find frost forming on the inside wall again, thicker than before. The temperature dipped lower tonight. The sight is sobering, but you do not panic. You pull your blanket tighter, adjust your position, and let yourself drift again. This would have terrified you weeks ago. Now it is information. At some point before dawn, your body settles into a deeper rest. It does not last long, but it is enough. When you wake for good, your limbs ache but function. You sit up slowly, letting blood move where it needs to go. Rushing feels foolish now. Cold punishes haste. As you step outside into the pale morning light, you realize something quietly remarkable. You slept. Not well, not comfortably, but successfully. Your body held its heat. Your shelter did its job. The night did not defeat you. This understanding changes how you approach the coming evenings. You no longer dread them with the same intensity. You respect them. You prepare for them. Sleep is no longer an afterthought at the end of the day. It is a carefully managed resource, as vital as food or firewood. And as the sun struggles upward, offering little warmth but enough light to work, you carry that knowledge with you. The science of staying warm is not written in books here. It is written in muscle memory, in nightly adjustments, in the quiet confidence that grows each time you wake alive. Night settles in again, and by now, sleep is no longer a solitary act. You are learning that warmth multiplies when bodies are close. Alone, The cold finds every weakness. Together it slows, confused by shared heat and shifting breath. This is not romance. It is arithmetic. As darkness thickens outside the shelter, people begin arranging themselves for the night. Space is negotiated carefully. Who sleeps where matters. Near the fire means more warmth, but also sparks and smoke. Farther away means clearer air, but colder air too. Eventually, you realize that the warmest place is not always closest to the flame. It is often closest to another person. Records from early colonial settlements describe shared beds as common practice, not just for families, but for unrelated adults as well. This was not viewed as strange. It was practical. Beds were expensive, space was limited, and warmth was essential. You feel this reality settle in as you lie down beside someone you barely knew weeks ago. The bed itself is crude, a wooden frame if you're lucky, a sack stuffed with straw if you're not. The straw shifts beneath you, poking through thin fabric. It smells faintly sweet and dusty. Not comfortable, but insulating. You pull blankets over both of you, layering wool over wool, the weight of it pressing you gently into stillness. There is an unspoken etiquette to shared sleep. You turn slightly away, giving space where you can. You learn how to lie still enough not to disturb, but close enough to share heat. Elbows tucked, knees bent, breath slowed. You become aware of the other person's breathing, the rise and fall of their chest acting like a metronome for the night. One surprisingly intimate detail found in some personal letters is how often people mention warmth rather than affection when describing shared beds. Comfort replaced sentiment. A warm sleeper was valued, a restless one less so. Compatibility was measured in body heat and stillness. As the night deepens, you notice how much warmer this arrangement feels. Heat pools beneath the blankets, trapped and reused. Your feet do not ache as quickly. Your hands remain flexible longer. Sleep comes easier, pulled along by the steady presence beside you. There is still no consensus among researchers on how emotionally comfortable these arrangements truly were. Some argue they strengthened social bonds. Others believe they were endured rather than embraced. Lying here half asleep, you suspect both are true. Discomfort fades when survival is on the line. The blankets themselves deserve attention. Most are wool, heavy and imperfect. They smell of sheep and smoke and long use. Wool scratches, but it insulates even when damp, which makes it invaluable. Linen sheets, when available, go underneath, protecting skin from irritation. Cotton is rare. Silk is unheard of. Luxury is measured in thickness. You adjust the blankets, carefully tucking edges under bodies to block drafts. The act feels ritualistic now. Everyone knows the sequence. Settle the fire, check the walls, arrange the bedding. Only then does sleep feel possible. Skipping steps invites a restless night. Someone shifts beside you and you wake briefly. There's a shared awareness, a quiet apology without words. You both resettle, heat redistributing. The shelter creaks softly, responding to the cooling air outside. Wind brushes the walls, but does not find its way in as easily tonight. A detail that often surprises modern readers is that children frequently slept with adults, not just parents, but other relatives or community members. Their smaller bodies lost heat faster. Keeping them warm was a collective effort. You think of this as you notice how much colder the space feels when one body moves away even briefly. Sleep stretches longer tonight, not uninterrupted, but smoother. You drift without the sharp jolts of cold waking you every hour. Dreams come more fully. They're still simple but less anxious. Warmth changes the mind as much as the body. At one point, you wake to the sound of wind rising. The shelter groans and snow begins to fall outside, soft but insistent. You pull the blanket higher instinctively. The person beside you does the same. Heat increases slightly, enough to push the cold back again. Academic opinion remains divided on whether shared sleeping significantly reduced winter mortality. Numbers are hard to isolate, but lived experience suggests it mattered. Nights like this feel survivable in a way solitary ones do not. As morning approaches, the air cools again, but you are ready for it. Your body has stored enough warmth to carry you through the last hours. When light finally filters in, pale and weak, you wake slowly, reluctant to break the shared heat. Eventually, you separate, blankets falling open, cold rushing back in like water through a broken dam. You sit up, muscles stiff, but alive. You glance at the other person, sharing a look that says everything without needing speech. You slept together. And in this place, in this season, that feels like a quiet triumph. As the nights continue stacking up behind you, fire becomes the center of everything. It is not just a source of warmth, it is a presence, watched and tended like a living thing. When you lie down to sleep, your eyes find it automatically, glowing low and red, a small sun inside your fragile world. Most early colonial homes were built around a central hearth, according to surviving settlement layouts and household records. The fireplace was not decorative, it was survival infrastructure. Without it, sleep in winter would have been nearly impossible. You feel this truth every night as temperatures sink and the fire's warmth becomes the difference between rest and misery. But fire is never fully trustworthy. You learn that quickly. Sparks jump without warning. Smoke shifts with the wind, sometimes filling the shelter and forcing coughing fits in the middle of the night. You wake choking, eyes stinging, heart racing, scrambling half asleep to adjust a log or open a gap near the roof. Warmth and danger share the same source. One strange habit noted in several colonial accounts is the practice of banking the fire before sleep. You do this now without thinking. Ashes are carefully pulled over glowing embers, smothering flames while preserving heat. The goal is not brightness, but longevity. A fire that lasts quietly through the night is better than one that burns hot and dies too soon. Sleeping near the hearth feels safest, but also risky. You've heard stories already. A sleeve catching fire, a blanket smoldering unnoticed, entire homes lost before dawn. These stories circulate not as entertainment, but as warnings. Everyone adjusts their sleeping position slightly farther back than instinct might prefer. There is no agreement among historians on how often nighttime fires caused fatalities compared to exposure deaths. Records are incomplete, and tragedies were not always documented in detail. From your position on the floor, watching embers pulse softly, the danger feels balanced. Fire may kill, but without it, cold certainly will. You become sensitive to the sound of burning wood. A steady crackle means things are fine. Sharp pops suggest moisture inside the logs. Sudden silence is worse. Silence means the fire is failing. You wake instantly when that happens, body alert before mind, trained by repetition. The heat from the hearth does not spread evenly. Warmth pools close, leaving corners cold and dark. You notice how people angle their beds, feet toward the fire, faces turned away from smoke. Over time, sleeping positions across the shelter begin to look similar, shaped by invisible lines of heat and airflow. A detail that rarely appears in grand historical narratives is how much time people spent simply staring at the fire before sleep. It soothed nerves, steadied breathing, and marked the transition from work to rest. You find yourself doing the same, watching embers pulse like slow breathing, letting your thoughts quiet. The smell of smoke settles into everything: hair, blankets, skin. At first, it is unpleasant. Later, it becomes reassuring. Smoke means warmth nearby. It means effort and vigilance. Some settlers even reported feeling uneasy sleeping in spaces without the familiar scent, associating clean air with cold and danger. You also learn that not all wood burns the same. Hardwoods last longer, burning slower and hotter. Softwoods flare quickly but fade fast. This knowledge becomes critical at night. You choose logs carefully before sleep, saving the best for darkness rather than daylight cooking. Researchers continue to disagree on whether early settlers overused nearby forests in their first winters or practiced careful fuel management from the start. From what you see, necessity drives behavior. Firewood disappears quickly. Axes swing daily. Sleep depends on tomorrow's labor as much as today's. Late at night, when the shelter is quiet except for breathing and the soft hiss of embers, you feel a strange gratitude toward the fire. It does not judge your fear or fatigue. It simply burns, asking only attention in return. You wake once to the smell of nothing wrong. Not smoke exactly, but too much of it. The fire has shifted, sending smoke back into the room. Eyes watering, you move automatically, nudging a log, opening a small vent near the roof. The air clears slowly. You lie back down, heart pounding, then gradually slowing again. Sleep returns in waves. You drift, wake, check the fire with half-open eyes, drift again. This pattern repeats so often it begins to feel normal. Rest here is not absence of awareness, it is controlled vigilance. As dawn approaches, the fire fades to dull grey. Enough warmth remains to carry you through the last stretch. When light finally arrives, you sit up and stretch stiff muscles, soot smudged on your hands and face. Fire kept you alive through another night. It also demanded respect, planning, and constant awareness. As you step outside into the cold morning air, you know this truth deeply now. Warmth is never passive. It must be earned, guarded, and shared with care. And every night you sleep beside the hearth, you walk a narrow line between comfort and catastrophe, trusting yourself to keep the balance until morning. By the time you lie down tonight, you feel like a walking bundle rather than a person. Layers press against layers, fabric against fabric, each one carrying a job description. Nothing you wear is accidental anymore. Clothing has become architecture, a portable shelter you take in to sleep with you. Written inventories from early colonial households show wardrobes dominated by wool and linen, with very little variation. This was not personal preference, it was necessity. Wool traps air, resists moisture, and keeps insulating even when damp. Linen breathes and protects skin. You understand this now in your body, not as theory, but as nightly evidence. You start with a linen shift closest to your skin. It feels cool at first, then slowly warms. Over that goes wool, coarse and heavy, smelling faintly of lanolin and smoke. Another layer follows if you have it, sometimes worn backwards or inside out to catch more air. Every seam, every fold matters. Sleep dressed like this is awkward. Turning takes effort. Blankets pile on top, compressing the layers beneath. But once still, the warmth builds gradually, like a slow fire catching. You can feel it spreading from your core outward, inch by inch, negotiating with the cold rather than surrendering to it. One small but revealing custom from the period is the widespread use of nightcaps. These were not fashion statements, they were survival tools. You wear one now, pulled low over your ears. Without it, your head aches from cold within minutes. With it, you feel noticeably more stable, as if warmth has stopped leaking upward. There is no settled agreement on how much settlers understood about heat escaping through the head, but the habit was nearly universal. You do not care why it works. You only care that it does. Your feet demand special attention. Wool stockings, sometimes doubled. If they get damp during the day, you dry them obsessively before night. Putting on wet socks feels like inviting pain. Some people wrap spare cloth around their feet before sleep, crude but effective. You try it once and never skip it again. Shoes are removed but not ignored. You place them near the fire so they will not freeze solid. Frozen leather cracks. Frozen laces snap. These are small failures with outsized consequences. Morning survival depends on nighttime preparation. A habit that feels almost strange today but was common then is sleeping fully clothed, belts loosened, but garments kept on. Undressing meant exposing skin to cold air, and redressing in the morning could be agony. You choose sleep over modesty every time. Your hands remain a problem. Gloves help during the day, but at night they restrict circulation. You try sleeping with them on, then off, then tucked under blankets. Eventually, you settle on a compromise, hands bare, but kept close to your body. They warm slowly but stay functional. Researchers have never fully reconciled how much early settlers borrowed clothing practices from indigenous communities versus clinging to European habits. You see hints of adaptation around you: moccasin-style footwear, fur trim added to hoods, extra layers wrapped rather than sewn. Cold encourages flexibility where tradition once ruled. Fur is rare but prized. When someone has it, they guard it carefully. Fur blankets or cloaks change sleep entirely, trapping warmth in a way wool cannot quite match. You feel the difference immediately. if you're lucky enough to use one, as if the night has softened its grip. Still, nothing is perfect. Fabric shifts as you sleep, exposing skin briefly. Cold air finds those gaps instantly. You wake with a sharp awareness, adjust, and drift again. This happens repeatedly, but each time with less panic. Your body has learned the routine. You notice that people who dress poorly for sleep wake more often, cough more, complain quietly. The difference is visible. Clothing choices shape nights as clearly as fire or shelter. No one lectures about it. Experience teaches faster. Letters from the era often mention mending clothes by candlelight after dark. You understand why. A torn seam or thinning fabric can mean the difference between rest and misery. You sit with needle and thread some evenings, fingers stiff, repairing garments that look tired but still have work to do. The question remains open among historians whether these constant clothing repairs slowed colonial productivity or enabled it by preserving health. From where you sit, half asleep with needle in hand, the answer feels obvious. Warm bodies work better. You also learn what not to wear. Metal buttons grow painfully cold. Tight laces restrict blood flow. Anything too stiff creates pressure points that ache by midnight. Comfort is redefined here. Not softness, but tolerance. As you settle in for the night, fully layered and cocooned, you feel heavier but safer. The cold presses from outside, but it does not reach you as quickly now. Your breathing slows, muscles unclench. Dreams come again, shaped by fabric and warmth. You dream of wrapping, of being enclosed, of holding heat like something precious and fragile. When you wake briefly, you're not startled. You know where you are. You know what to adjust. Morning arrives with the familiar stiffness. You peel layers away slowly, letting cold air back in a controlled way. Rushing feels foolish. You have learned patience from winter. As you stand and stretch, you glance at the pile of clothing that kept you alive through the night. It looks ordinary, worn, unremarkable. But you know better now. These layers are not just garments. They're decisions, habits, lessons stitched together. And every night you sleep wrapped in them, you carry your shelter with you thread by thread into the dark. The night feels calm now, steady and familiar. Your breathing slows naturally, no longer measured, just easy and deep. The images of cold and fire and shelter soften, fading at the edges like embers settling into ashes. You do not need to hold vigilance anymore. The work is done. The night is no longer a test. It is simply night. You let your body sink fully into rest, muscles loosening one by one. Shoulders soften, jaw unclenches. Thoughts drift without effort, unhooked from worry or planning. The quiet around you feels safe. Warmth holds. Time stretches gently, without urgency. If a thought passes through you, let it float by like breath on cold air that disappears as soon as it forms. There is nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to prepare for right now. Sleep deepens, layers of rest settling over you as softly as snow falling without wind, even silent, complete. You are carried forward by this calm, held by the steady rhythm of breath and stillness, drifting comfortably toward a long, unbroken rest. And as the story fades, so do the edges of wakefulness, leaving you exactly where you need to be.